Today is open Q&A on the FileMaker server, and so we want to answer all those questions for everyone. Upcoming real quick, so welcome. Start this again. Once again, hi, I'm Rich Carlton. Welcome to fmtrain.tv, where every day at 1 o'clock Pacific time, probably a different time where you're at, we are doing questions and answers. We're being inspired by you. Hopefully we inspire you. You inspire us for sure. So we want to definitely ask. Today is like an open Q&A, but let's take a look at the upcoming broadcast schedule. I'm going to push this button right here, and you can see this coming up. So today is open Q&A. Monday and Tuesday are an interesting scenario because we've basically the point where we're rolling out Active Directory or Azure Active Directory on FileMaker Server. It's something that RCC has. We're not a Microsoft shop, and the Active Directory options, we don't love, that enough to really roll it out. But setting up everyone's individual username and passwords on every FileMaker file is a giant pain in the ass when you have a larger organization with lots of FileMaker files and lots of servers. So having some sort of single sign-on, a single place for you to sign on once, and then from that point forward, it just automatically handles that for you, is very advantageous. Azure Active Directory is basically Microsoft's cloud offering, so it's not a local domain server. If you're a Microsoft shop, you know what I'm talking about. You set up a domain server. It's like this, admin IT management server thing that goes in, and when people come in at a computer on the network, they log in, it authenticates to that machine, then their computer pops open, kind of thing. Being Microsoft and making it ugly as possible is always an anathema. It's a thing that kind of chafes at me, kind of like having Nick Hunter not be beautiful. So we're finally going to use this, which is a cloud offering, and the cost on it is effectively zero because it's such a trivial service. Microsoft considers authentication a very trivial exercise for them and a very minor thing, but for the world in FileMaker, it's kind of a big deal for us because Claris doesn't really provide it for FileMaker Server. At one point, years ago, they were going to bring Claris ID to FileMaker Server, and then amongst all the other things that were promised and said to the community, that was one of those things that was promised and said that went off a cliff. So I think someday it'll come to FileMaker Server, but I think you're talking well after FileMaker 20 comes out, server, whatever the new server 20 is, with the new engine, etc. In terms of announcements, there's going to be a webinar from Claris. Robert Halsey was basically going to, if you put one and one together and you can get two, you can understand that when they did their Big Dog and Pony Show in September, they didn't have anything to show because basically they had started from scratch and were working on something. They haven't had anything really to show us yet. We're hoping this coming week they will have something to show us, which will be very exciting. In the meantime, the Active Directory looks like it's solid and stable. This has been in the product for a while. We like FileMaker Server 19.3.2, so I'm going to say this out loud for everyone to understand. RCC likes and believes to be stable the Mac and Windows version of FileMaker 19.3.2. There are issues with FileMaker 19.3.2 server Linux. We are not deploying Linux in real combat scenarios. It's like deploying your troops with a gun that malfunctions about every third or fourth or fifth round. And so demo's great. It's lots of fun, but we've had a test server set up with absolutely nothing special about it, and it's been crashing. And so we've sent the crash logs off to Claris. And this is on an Amazon server, so it's very generic. So we expect that Claris is going to have to unkink that product a little bit. So that's the official kind of recommendation. Now, FileMaker 19.4 is going to be coming out. Okay. Are we all excited about that? Right? I mean, you know how it is with Claris right now. They build a feature, they don't really test it, and then it gets thrown out at us. And so I don't want to be the beta test use case for the first person to use 19.4. Theoretically, it allows you to do single sign-on. Right now, and this is a certification test question, single sign-on is either Google, a log-on, it's Amazon, right? Or it is Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory is only one of the three that offers group management, which is essential for not wanting to pull your hair out. So that's the one we're using now. We're starting with FileMaker 19.4. They're going to add to that list of other services that are supported besides those three. Now, those three are certification test questions. I would not expect the certification test to change immediately. So understand there'll probably be a question on the certification test that will be maybe misleading or a little bit off a little bit. So, and then we are looking at an intensive certification workup, a 1 week special event, not part of the daily, weekly live stream. It'll be probably 5 solid days of intensive workups. The folks that are here, who are our customers or have the live training or have our current bundles that are active, will get a discount on it. Some of you will get comped on it, I'm sure, if you want it. But it's probably going to be a 5-day paid event because it's going to be very, very intensive. We came at this after the last experience we had earlier this week. People really liked it and they wanted to learn this stuff so they could take the test and pass it. And the problem is you can't learn it in a day or two. It'll take longer than that for us to really bang through that. If you have our training, our bundled training right here, a lot of the great content we have is already, what you need is already here. However, if we offer a new 5-day like event on just certification, like in depth, like say 90 minutes a day, maybe 2 hours a day, depends on what goes on with that. You'll get it at a discount if you have our bundle and you're current, and vice versa. If you don't have our training bundle and you want it and you buy that, we'll give you a discount on that. But just keep in mind there's benefits to staying up to date with our training. So Jacob Taylor, are you there? And do we have any of our first questions yet? I know that Larry had a question off topic a little bit. We could go and kill that one. Yeah, so Larry had a question, and it was an interesting question because I think one of the things about learning about certification and stuff is that there's a lot of little obscure checkboxes that people run into. And I, of course, managed to pin myself in here with my headset. A lot of little checkboxes in the FileMaker platform. If I go over here to FileMaker, which is right here, and I say go to recent, and I go to CMS, say I open up the CMS database. So this is a database, kind of an ugly database, but this is the a broadcast schedule, right? So this is great. So if I go up in here, File, down to File Options, I think under here somewhere, where was that at? It was under Layout Options. Where was it? It was an Auto Save function, which was kind of, where was that at, Larry? It's kind of a, where was that at? Under Layout Options. So if I go to Layout Mode, Command or Control L, then I go Layout, then I go Layout Setup. Yeah, there we go. And so save record changes to save record changes automatically. Not save layout changes, but save record changes. Okay. So let me explain to you how this works. FileMaker is pretty much this little checkbox here. Probably was some caveat thing that was made for some FileMaker customer who schniveled and whined 25 or 30 years ago. There's no really option not to save the records in FileMaker. It saves them, okay? The only thing this is going to do is start throwing dialog box at your user. Would you like to save changes? Would you like to save changes? If you don't save the changes, it'll revert all the work you've done. So if you want to turn this on or off, I mean, we could try to do that real quick on the file. Say, okay, browse mode. And so I make it, I type, oh, I was trying to load them. What? Whoa, FileMaker just crashed. All right, that was awesome. I couldn't load the main dictionary, so then it just blew up. That was awesome. On live TV. I have actually not crashed FileMaker like that in a long time. Recent. So that's what happens when you check a checkbox. Ignore, thank you. FileMaker, recent. Oh, there is a CMS down there. So I'm going to open the CMS up. And we're going to go to that layout over here, the live stream layout. I'm going to say, show me the upcoming live stream events. So these are upcoming events. I'm going to go back to layout mode. I'm going to see if it kept that setting on there. Layout setup. Okay, it's off. Okay, go to browse mode. Okay, I'm going to click in here. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to click out. Would you like to save this change? Don't save the change. Then it reverts it. It's not like you can not save it. Either it does or it doesn't. And if you don't want to save the change, then why the hell did you put it in there in the first place, right? I mean, FileMaker's kind of like that. It's like automatic saving, right? So it's giving you a possibility. It's like if you clicked here and type some stuff, then you tab, and then you type some stuff, and then you do 8 more things, and you type some stuff, and then you click out. Would you like to save the changes? Which one? Doesn't matter. All the ones you had previously. Well, which ones are those? I don't know. Oh, don't save it. Then you don't get anything. So this is a very antiquated option. It's like some of my engineers do the same thing. They'll say don't, if they go in the FileMaker and they'll go FileMaker preferences. and they'll say save layout. They'll say save layout changes automatically, do not ask. A lot of my engineers will turn this off. And I'm like, you realize there's an undo, right? They've added like almost unlimited undos to the layout. So if you make a bunch of changes you don't like it, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, it unwinds it, right? But like Christian Olsen will turn this on. A couple of people turn this on. They get this extra dialog box. And I'm like, so what are you going to do? 10 minutes, 20 minutes of work and say no? I don't know that I've ever seen them. Because the only way you know that you don't like the layout change is if you test it. And the only way to test it is to save it, right? Think about it. If you're in layout mode, you make a bunch of changes. Do you really like the changes? I don't know. We got to go to browse mode to do it. But to go to browse mode, you had to save it, right? So the only way to test it is to save it. This is the dumbest stuff ever. I never understood. Someday maybe someone will explain to me why they like that. But you can't test the layout. And then if you find it doesn't work the way you want to, you go to layout mode and you say undo, Command Z, and you say undo, right? Makes sense? So anyway, so very interesting. Well, I mean, yeah, it's either we save it or we don't, and it unwinds everything prior to the last commit, right? Everything that we're doing. So it's like Word, right? But the difference with Microsoft Word is that you can see the edits as they go on the screen. You save it or you don't save it. With a layout change, you don't get to know if it even works or not unless you save it, which is part of going to browse mode. And then you like it or you don't like it, right? I mean, as a developer, you're constantly going back in going, that didn't work, that didn't work, go back. That didn't work, go back. That didn't go work. And the question is, do you unwind it or do you edit it again, right? Doesn't matter, so whatever works for you. But you had to save it, so the dialogue is just dumb. All right, so what's Jacob Taylor, if you want to like dive into the question here, the first one here. Ruben says, what is the best practice for for server scripts? Server scripts. That's like a weird word. Server scripts that run on server, scripts that run on PSOS or SASE.
I think the answer is probably yes. There you go. He corrected it. The PSOS.
He corrected it in real time. All right. Let me bring this over here so people can see the question. So we want to be nice about this. So here is the question. What are the better practice for PSOS scripts? This is a script that a client activates that tells the server to run the script for an instance of a couple script steps that need error handling. Script 1, if error, exit error. Script 2, if error. Okay, so real simple. So so the way scripts fire from the client, they're fire and forget, or they fire and wait. So fire and forget is when you pickle the request off, you pickle the missile, and it goes flying off, and you don't know what it hits or if it hit anything and what happened as a result, okay? For best performance, sometimes that's a good thing to do. If you want the client to wait, then you can return the error back to the client. If you don't want to wait for the client, like you want to fire and forget, then you're going to take that error information and write it to a log file. That makes sense? So I'm not sure if error, not error, when error, not error. I mean, the issue is not so much having the error, it's saving it, because you're identifying PSOS, once PSOS, okay? So it's on the server, so you have no visibility into that except some very vague log files. And then you have a local variable which wouldn't be saved anyway, right? So you have so you're actually talking about the result. He's talking about passing the error back in the result. So he's talking about fire and forget, or no, fire and wait. So you're waiting for the result to come back, okay? And then if error 1 handles, then, yeah, I mean, there's 100 different ways of doing this, right? You just have to specify the error of what happened, or maybe a list of errors that happened. Because just because the dollar result can be a value list of all the failures, right? Error this happened here, error this happened here, error this. Could be one failure, or it could be like a whole paragraph of text, right?
Yep.
Cool.
And realistically, your error handling will probably depend more on the actual process. So if it's something where you can do incremental processing where, right, if you encounter an error at some point in the process, it can bail safely and that doesn't blow anything up or result in inconsistency in your data set, then yeah, start taking your errors and, I don't know, write them into a log somewhere a human might find them, email them to yourself, whatever. There's 17 different ways you can do that. But otherwise, then you may need to actually get aggressive at handling the errors, based on, if you either need to do stuff and then unroll it, if that's the case, or do stuff and then bail, as in, you need to exit the process completely because it's going to result in data inconsistency or something like that.
All right, yeah. So Jacob was talking there. I should have put Jacob's face up there, but there you go. Sorry about that, Jacob.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll put him over here on the slice on the side and put this in the middle. Makes sense. There's not really one way. Now, yeah, this is one of those things that there's more than one way to do it. For example, when we fire off scripts to FileMaker Server from our finished goods system, like we do management of the emails, we send tech support emails in, or we send out a newsletter or something like that. We send newsletters out in the middle of the week and on Saturday. So a lot of you get an email tomorrow from me, assuming it doesn't go into your spam, right? And that process is manipulating and dealing with 30 some odd thousand people we email, right? And as a result of that, we don't even bother waiting for the system to come back. Well, it runs on a robot for starters, and the robot then, as it runs into issues or errors, writes them into a log file that we can go back and triage, right? And what's interesting about it, I'm going to open this up real quick. This is kind of educational. This is something else for you to think about. If I'm going to go to, I'm just going to open up finished. Let me see. Let me go to can I go to finished goods in here? General system log. Okay, so let me show you this here. So this is really awesome stuff right here. You guys will like this. So a lot of times that I have like 1.8 million records in my log notes here. And if I go down to the end down here, I'm going to go down to the very end. This is another way. So what I have is processes that will start. And the issue I run into is that I have multiple things, multiple parts, people, users, PSOS, a robot. They will log on and they might write log entries, okay? And so here you have a log entry right here. Ryan Correa is doing something, looks like he's doing it, and I can tell whether it's a PSOS up here in the top right. You can see I got FileMaker Client, PSOS, or Custom Web Publishing Engine. So I have a note here as to what is writing the log entry, right? Pretty interesting, right? So I have Ryan is running 1803 or 1804 because he's a sales guy and he doesn't update to the latest version. You have to beat him over the head to update. But you have a process over here. Sometimes you'll have a process that takes a while to run. And so what I did is I said, what I want to be able to do is click on something and see that it's going to take a while for something to run. So like I click on this one, there's a good one right here. So this is those 4 log entries right here. It doesn't really matter what they are. Daniel Ortiz did something. He downloaded a starting point or did something, right? So it should have logged the time a lot. There's no time entry in here, so I would be curious to know about, there's actually, yeah, it doesn't look like that's in there. It should be in there. But this is the same process. So it's a log, it's an error log that says it's running, it does some, then it says it's ending, right? And then I normally have a beginning ending, but a lot of times you'll have a couple entries here and a couple entries up here, and they'll be spread out. And so the only way to easily see that that's part of the same process is we would assign a session. Every log, these are a unique log number, but like when it starts a process, like it's going to run for a minute or 2 minutes, it creates a record, it notates this number, and then it keeps using this number to keep this as a grouped for the process. It's a group, right? And that process, beginning process all the way down to the end of the process. So if I go at 4 in the morning over here, we'll go to 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning. We'll see if the robot was running. Here it is. Robot starts running right here, hourly maintenance. Let me just click that. So it ran that group of 4 items right there. Pretty interesting, eh? But then if I come down here, 4 a.m. Oh, so that's 6 a.m. Let me try early morning here, because it does some stuff in the wee hours of the morning. Here we go. Here's another one right here. Okay, so this ran over over a couple minutes, right? But the point is, if something else would have come in, you would add a log entry in the middle of this that would not be part of it. So what you're doing is it highlights, it's reversing with formatting, it's reversing the colors of just anything with that matching group number, right? So you've got this one here by itself, this one here. I'm trying to find one that's kind of spread across some places, right? But you get the idea. You could have a group of items that are Oh yeah, staff analytics. So this runs, and then it runs over here too, right? So you click on this one, but you could have something in the middle from someone else. So that allows you to see it. So it's another just an error logging trick, because the problem is I was trying to look at the log, and I had a line here and a line here, and it was separate, and you couldn't really see it. So you find that group, and you hit it, and you're like, that's the group, right? There's the group, and they happen to be all together here, but frequently they won't be together, right? So. Other questions from people? Yeah. Well, it's just helped me to triage it to see it. I'm very visual. When Jacob was trying to teach me about the Active Directory stuff this morning, or a little bit ago, and I'm like very visual, like pictures. And he goes, read the text, read the instructions. And I'm a very slow reader. I'm like in the bottom. Some things I do are really high percentile, but I am a very slow reader. And I'm conscientious about being slow. So when people are watching me read, I get nervous, so I like to skim and skip, and then I screw up the instructions, right? So it's like really, yes. Question, go ahead.
Oh, did you see the ones on Twitch and YouTube?
I want to read it. In Admin Console, in Configuration, in Folders, is the default database folder path correct? How do you include a folder one level down? So you are talking about maybe gathering your databases. You've got a sales database, and so we're going to put that inside a sales folder, for example, in the default location. That will just be loaded, actually. RCC does that. We have little collections of databases that are internal, basically.
But they're one level down, or they're all at the 0 level, or whatever?
There's some are 0 level, some are 1 level down. I don't believe it will load 2 levels down, though. So
could you have the that test server, the Linux test server, the one that we don't necessarily recommend, but you could look at this?
Yes.
So the admin console should be consistent. You'll need to share your screen.
No,
you have to quit. You have to quit and come back.
It's permissions.
Just quit and go fix it. Quit, go fix it, and then come back. Okay? Because we're gonna have other questions that'll come up. All right, Lynn, we are desperately working on that for you. Jacob's on a different computer in the office here in Los Osos. There's a roving question about everything. Can you move forward with other work and then have the error report to you? Yeah, the error report, that's why you write it in the log. You go retrieve it out of the log or something, right? You'd have to script that. That makes sense, right? So, yeah, you'd have to script that. Mark, are you going to invite him back? Is that what you have to do?
He should have the ability to join back, but I will send him another invite of wonder. Give me a second.
Yeah, I mean, if you do fire and forget, there's no automatic on the PSOS request. There's no automatic. There's no automatic go and collect that error. You'd have to go and find that error because you saved it in a specific location.
So, did you want to see the folder layout of the Linux server? Or just the admin console?
Just the admin console, because you can show both. I don't know. It's up to you. But
I can't show the other one. Unless I can SSH into it and list it for you, but
just walk us through it, maybe verbally. But you got to show your screen. So where do we go to backups? Is that what they're talking about? Lynn's talking about?
The folder configuration is over here. And then you're looking at folders, and so they're looking at these where you have default database, and you can copy it. You can't adjust it or do anything like that.
Okay.
But the thing that I'm noting is, so for example, let's say you've got like a little multi-file solution. You got 5 databases. You got one for your salespeople, one for the admins. Let's say I work for you, so you've got a hosting database, right? Okay, cool. So if you wanted to put a folder in here inside databases that was hosting database, and then put that particular database inside the folder, and then that would be where any container data would live as well. That will show up actually. Okay. However, 2 levels down, if you had databases /hosting / pre-sales or something, okay. That won't. FileMaker doesn't pick that up. It only looks like 1 level down.
Okay, so Lynn has another question here on the admin console. Lynn says there are charts for system stats. There's the 3 charts on the admin console. Mm-hmm. What numbers are too high for network or disk throughput? Too high.
I don't think even Claris has an answer for that, actually.
It's always going to get bigger as we have better hardware and you have more demands on the hardware, right? The number always, if you have a better solid state drive or an NVMe drive, they'll be lower in that case.
Even they'll go up with load, yes.
Yeah, up with load.
I basically ignore any numbers that are less than 4, whatever, less than 1,000. Basically, I don't care. That's latency that's less than a second. So
Well, I know, but I mean, when you're talking about network throughput, we're not talking about latency. This thing's talking about the amount of bytes or bits or whatever it's shoving through the pipe, right? So if you go back to dashboard.
Well, but if that's the metric that you're looking for,
no,
that's what I mean.
it's the dashboard. The only charts are right here, strictly speaking.
Is that what they're talking about?
Well, he said there are charts for system stats, right?
Oh, that is the home screen. Yes. None of this matter. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know why this stuff is here. It ends up being unhelpful, with the specific exception of the CPU. If you have pinned your CPU, you're at 100%. That's a problem, obviously.
And memory.
Same thing for memory. On ours, this is 25%. Fantastic. We have like alerts on our Windows machines if they go above 95% because that's uncomfortably full, basically. But if it's 90 or less, I wouldn't care. For a lot of this stuff, the actual answer is if it's not causing a problem, it's not causing a problem.
Yeah.
So you want to keep it under a high water mark.
So this right here tops out at 100%, right? Understand. So that's anything close to 100% is you're running out of gas. This right here, you know how much memory is on your computer. So if you have 8 gigs or 16 gigs or whatever you have, right? Yep. Or whatever. That's a percentage too. That's percentage too.
It is a percent as well.
The network, but network is a thing that
byte per second.
Yeah, byte, which is a completely worthless metric. Only network geeks who are unwashed heathens deal with bytes or bits per second, right? It's always kbytes or megabytes per second as a manageable number, right? So because like Lynn just said, oh, I got 180,000. What does that mean in practical terms? Well, I don't know. You have to divide by 1024, and that gets us Ka.
It's 180 megs on the high end, which just means that you're less than a quarter saturating a gigabit line. So, means that your server's screaming data around. That's all.
Yeah. So it's one of those sort of things. It never really goes above it. Lynn says it doesn't go above it. The question is, doesn't go above it because it can't, or because your database needs never go above it. See right here. So this says right here. So this is one of those sort of. It's kind of a loaded question. Like my network throughput never exceeds 180,000. Is that the highest?
No.
Well, no, it depends. If you're on a network from 20 years ago with original 10 base to Ethernet, you've maxed it out, right? But if you have 100 fast Ethernet, which is 100 megabit, or 100, fast was 100, right?
It'd be like 100.
Yeah.
Is that 100,000 or
yeah.
Whatever the math on that is, yeah.
Yeah, or then you got gigabit Ethernet or 10 gigabit Ethernet, right? And then whatever's beyond that.
And also note it's bytes per second, not bits. And most people's internet is bits, not bytes. And so you have to do that math conversion as well.
Yeah, so it's really
so your 100 megabit, which that'll be your screaming local Ethernet, unless you're gig, and maybe you're 10 gig at this point even. Some of you will be. 100 megabit. The theoretic max on that is 12.5 megabytes per second. You'll never see it exceeding that.
Yeah.
And that's what 112.5 million, I think.
Yeah.
So big numbers.
The problem is that these numbers here, this is like really, I mean, from someone like me, I always convert everything to something so the numbers are small. I mean, running around comparing 180,000 to 248,000 to, I mean, just drop the zeros, Holmes. Let's just get it simple, right? So anyway.
Yeah. And well, you can see it trickles data here. The other thing is I actually would consider the network graph particularly to be useless. And the reason for that is because it doesn't actually tell you about the problems. Like, obviously, if you know how fast your network is and you see that your FileMaker server is, using, ballpark of the full speed, then maybe upgrading your network would be something that you could look at. Okay, cool. But like realistically, if you're trying to like diagnose a performance issue or something like that, you need actually more low-level information. So for example, one of the things that William let me know is that, who's our previous server and IT guy that I sort of inherited all this stuff from, one of the things that he noted is you have things like packet rejections and how many of the packets either were fragmented or were not, i.e. were broken into bigger, smaller pieces to be transmitted. Those will cause performance issues, basically.
Yeah, drop packets.
And then additionally, right, drop packets. And so any of those things can be indicative of some sort of a performance or a network issue, et cetera. You can't see any of that on this graph at all.
Yeah, this is the charts in here are pretty. The charts in here are pretty limited and lame. I think the space is useful. I think the CPU and the memory useful. Beyond that, one of the conversations I have to have with clients, especially with our this one's a Linux server, so it actually only has one hard drive in it. For our Windows servers, they all have 3, sometimes 4 hard drives in them. That volume status on the left side only looks at where FileMaker Server, the application, is installed. So if that's your Windows drive, it will never tell you about your database drive, your backups drive, if you have one, a container data drive. Yeah.
It doesn't list that. It doesn't add up all the space and divide it. Like even, that would be silly, but like it would at least give you total space and then total free or something like that. Doesn't do that. Doesn't give you multi-drives, none of this stuff. So unless you literally have everything on the same hard drive, which this system by chance does, that also doesn't tell you much, except if your boot drive is full, which that's important information for sure, but you're not going to go here to see that. So
I'm going to pivot real quick. I want to make sure that we took care of Texas Fly's question. So he was referring to Ruben's question about error reporting. He says, can you move forward with other work? So basically what he's saying is he's talking about calling a PSAW script, the fire and forget. We covered this. We've covered it in our live training and also but our paid training courses quite a bit. PSAWs, we cover it a ton. Can you move forward with other work and then have the error reporting back to you? Okay, so real quick here, I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to go to FileMaker real quick. I'm just going to say create... doesn't matter. I'm going to create a new file here. I'm going to do it the desktop. So this is a file right here, and say that I wanted create a new record here, and I'm going to go to script workspace, and I'm going to say create a new script, and I'm going to say PSAWS, and once again, this is not something we really do in 5 minutes, but PSAWS input random number, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna create first. This is the trigger, right? So this would be I would call this the client side. I would just for now keep it simple, client side, right? And then I'm going to create another script called PSAW server side random number. Okay, and so what I can do is I can say on the server side I'm going to say set. Now, there's a million things wrong with this demo, but I'm just going to make this work for everyone here. So I'm going to go to name, and I'm going to say input a produce a random number that's a decimal less than 1, I believe is what that does. I'm going to save that one there. So this is the one that's going to run on the server. This is the one I'm going to activate from the client. I'm going to say perform script on server. So the client is going to basically, so this tell the server to run the server side script for me, okay? And here's the operative thing we're talking about. Wait for completion on. This is the fire and forget. It doesn't say fire and forget. That's kind of a military thing. Wait for completion. Fire it and wait. No. This means fire it off and then continue. The script will continue to execute. Otherwise, we say fire it, wait for the server to complete, then we get the results back. The results will come back, and you can say, come back as a script parameter, right? And we could say, show me the script parameter from the server. If we tell it to continue on and not wait, you will never receive the script parameter from the server. It's never going to do it. That's why you have to write the log, right? So I'm going to zoom back out here. We'll just run this so everyone can see this run. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to say wait for completion off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to tell this to run. And what it'll probably do is find the one record in here. It's going to go to the name and put a random number in if it actually works, if I did this even remotely correctly. So I'm going to say run, press play, and what happened? Nothing happened, right? So did it work? We have no idea. Wait for completion off. So let's turn it on. And then I'm going to say show custom dialog, and we're just going to have it say okay. I don't need anything else. Results, because we don't know if it's an error or not. Results from PSOS. And we can say get me the script parameter, right? Or script result, sorry. Script result, what's come back, script. So when the script's corkscrew backwards, it's a script result. Script parameter is what you hand going forward. So they're basically the same thing, but one's forward, one's backwards. So I'm going to save it. So we're going to, it's going to wait for complete is on. I'm going to go back this one. I'm going to look at it. Good question. Maybe I can say, just for fun, what we'll do is we'll say, I'll say create new record, right? Create, oh no, I just said new record. Sorry, not create new record. I've been coding other stuff. Create new record request. There we go, save. Okay, and then it's going to set this. And then ideally when it exit, it would commit it anyway, right? So let's try that. So I'm going to go over here, input, we'll start the client side. I'm going to hit play. Okay, and nothing comes back. Did I not? Oh, I have to pass it back, right? Do I have to pass it back? Optional script parameter. When it completes, it should complete and send it backwards. Do I have this wrong, folks? Did I screw this up? Exit script, and I could always pass the get last error, right? That should work. Oh, I'm not even on the server. This file's not even on the server. I'm having a can of complete stupid at 900 miles an hour. Can I send this to you and have you post that on the server for me?
Yeah.
I'm going to stick it. That was really, sorry folks. I'm going, my brain is,
perfect.
My mouth is going faster than my brain, which is a really unfortunate problem. So that's another reason that you have to air trap. If you have someone who's running the file locally and you depend upon PSOS, you better trap for that and make sure it has a plan, right? Your server script should always say go to layout, right? It's actually a lot more than that, monkey bread, right? You know that. We're not going to take PSOS apart. People love to ask about PSOS, and the reality is it's at least a intensive 1 hour convert. If you've never seen it or understand it, and you're kind of new to the FileMaker platform, it's at least a solid 1 hour intensive conversation. So I recommend checking out our paid training and go in here and find the section on PSOS. So if I go to the video player and download the video player, you can download it right here. You can find that stuff. PSOS, it's in our training. But yeah, anyway, let me know if you get that popped up and I will go and open it.
It's ready.
It's going to want a password. Did you put a password on it, or
I did put a password on it. The password is admin.
Because
we're super secure.
Super secure. So if I go open host and I want to go to the test server, is that where it's at?
Yes, correct.
So what do I want to do? I want to say.
I think that'll do it. Yeah. Linux might do it. Trial is its official address.
Linux trial or just trial?
Just trial.
Trial.
You have Linux in your list. That's what I was saying. Yeah, trial.rcc.com.
Okay, save. There it is. Okay, what's it called? It's called assets. There it is. All right. So that's admin. Great. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to run that script client side. 0 is no error, right? And you're like, what happened? So you go over here. They put it in there. So that was no error, right? Pretty interesting, eh? What if I do something like this? I go over to the server side. I say create. I say show all records. Then I say omit multiple records, and I put dialog off. Remember, there's no dialog, and specify the records we're going to omit. We're going to omit all of them, right? Okay. So if I show all records, then I omit all the records, my found set is what? Right? And then I try to set a value into a no record, right? What's going to happen? It should be an error. So I'm going to save that, close that, come back over here, client side. Yeah, error 101, record missing, right? So we just waited and got the error back, right? Makes sense? So that's the basics of how this stuff works. There's a lot more to it, obviously, with PSOS, but that is the basics of how this technology works. Ruben says on Windows you can program the server performance monitor to log certain things and keep an eye on things. Yep, you can do that. So if you're working on Windows, that's fine. In this case, we're using the Linux server, but once again, basically the Linux server is at all practical purposes. It's back to being a 1.0 again because they had a 1.0 that was for
Those cloud,
CentOS, right? Well, that was the one they shipped, and then they rebuilt it for Ubuntu.
Yeah. Sorry, I traced the lineage back to FileMaker Cloud 1 because that's where this whole thing
kind of started,
at least in recent times. Yeah, and that was also why the very first version of the FileMaker server for Linux was on CentOS, because that was what Cloud 1 ran on. And so, right, it's just, clean some stuff up and turn the 3 features they turned off back on, basically. But yeah, then things changed with CentOS, and now they're on Ubuntu, which is also a good choice.
All right, so and that's what we're looking at here, right? So this is Linux.
Yeah, this is like the second point release that they've had out for Linux, I think.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned earlier, like we're not ready to endorse it yet. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem, though. Just this server particularly, we've had it crash several times, and there's no plugins, there's no scheduled scripts, there's nothing interesting about it. Basically,
it's a default install
it's a default clean install. I've done almost nothing to it except bump the RAM cache, basically. So
yeah. Questions. Oregon Dean has a question. Stu, Agent Chevy, Amco, Labo.
We did actually try and send the crash report to Claris, and they basically told us there wasn't a crash report in the crash report, which is very interesting.
Oh. Lynn is still confused about editing the default database folder path.
Let's see on YouTube.
You can't edit it. What are they confused about? What's the follow-up question?
Basically, he got lost in the explanation to begin with.
So,
okay.
Did you explain? He asked the question. Did you explain how to edit the folder path?
You cannot. The default one doesn't change. The only way to change it is to go in and install FileMaker Server to a different location.
Okay.
That's there is, if you want to, it's like that's this. If you bring my screen back up on.
Yeah, we see it. Yeah, you're in configuration. Okay, press configuration, then press folders. Then what?
And then folders.
And then what are we?
And so there's this. So these paths, the default and the secure here, they cannot, for intents and purposes, they cannot be changed. They're relative to wherever you install it. So right, this is a Linux one, so this is where they put it on the hard drive for Linux. But for example, if you were on a Windows machine and you had a secondary drive that you put all your FileMaker stuff on, it might be the D drive, for example. So you'd have D whatever, FileMaker Server, databases. But it's not going to ever be anything other than that bit of it. Like that's always there. So if you need to locate your databases elsewhere, that's what the additional database folder feature is for, and you just turn that on, and then you need to set up your location or whatever. So
for purposes of explanation here, explain these two paths up here. This path has been around since the dawn of time, right? Mm-hmm. FileMaker Server, database. You need to understand that, and then the default backups is FileMaker Server, data. Backups, right? So what is this one right here? What is that?
So secure, the secure database folder path, as they call it, was added, I believe, in 17. And what it's as you can see, it's right next to the database directory. It played a role on FileMaker Cloud, but for the context of FileMaker Server, what it does is it enforces kind of Claris determined best practices for database security. So as an example, if you upload a database into that folder, it will not open it if it doesn't have an encryption at rest password. It will not open it if it does not, or if you have like a full access user that like doesn't have a password, or the password's 1234. It won't open the database. It won't let you. If you on your file options, you have the automatic login, even if it's like a low key credential or something that doesn't have a lot of access, because it's going to take you to a login screen. Doesn't matter. You can't open that file. You have to disable the auto login. And I think there's another one. I don't remember what the fourth thing is, but basically there's a list of like basic file security basics. And if you don't meet those requirements, it just won't open the database for you. It just refuses. So,
all right. So, Margaret, with Lynn, did we answer the question? Because it seems like you found the default folder path, but
that was like a while back. So I think
okay, a while back.
9 seconds delay. So,
okay,
Lynn,
good.
Let us know if that answers your question.
Yeah, the answer is that you cannot change the default, but it does give you an alternate, and you can use the alternate. They don't use the word alternate. What's the word they used? What was the word?
Additional.
Additional. Okay, additional.
It's an additional database folder. Yeah.
Morgan Dean, will the server ever auto shift? It went away. I was reading that off of your screen, Jacob. Let's see. What does it say? Will the server auto shift? Auto version, subversion, updating?
Server? No.
Ever shift to auto versions?
He wants to know if it's going to be like Pro. If it's going to prompt you for the 0.3 and you're on 0.2. No. It alerts you to a new version being out. That's it. Those come onto the admin console on the little bell.
The top right.
This is
right
the little
there.
Bell.
Yeah, it'll pop and it'll say, it'll say you've used more than 80% of your RAM or 90% of your CPU. It'll give you these little warnings.
Or there's a new FileMaker server update out or whatever.
Yeah.
That all comes in there. This bell's here. This is notifications. See the same bell. Mm-hmm. So you can set up this email notifications or something like that. It's within the conversation, but I recommend highly that you set up some kind of email notifications with your FileMaker server. Frankly, it's a little noisy, and some of the stuff is kind of annoying and doesn't actually matter, even though it looks like your server's screaming and burning down. And some of it's just you learn what is ignorable and what is not. However, all details like that will come to you via an email if you turn it on. So if there's a new server version out, sometimes you'll get an update. They won't do the low-key ones that are like your CPU is over 80% or whatever. They don't tell you about that. But any kind of real core issues, a backup failed, for example, if you have a daily backup schedule that does a verification on the database, which is a decent thing to do. If the verification fails, you get an email, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a good way to keep track of stuff.
But that verification sometimes is a faulty alert too, right? Just keep that in mind.
No, the verification's not.
We've had them before where they fail to verify, and then the next day they verifies correctly. So.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
So then.
I haven't gotten one of those since.
Oh,
I wonder if that's an older problem. Maybe.
Well, who knows if they fix it or not? But it's one of those things that, see, these things. Jacobs went by it really fast. He says this can be kind of noisy. That's a fancy way of saying it's going to spam the shit out of your email, right?
Yep.
And the problem is,
and half of it or 90% of it is going to be completely ignorable, even though it looks like your server's burning to the floor right now.
Right, and that's the problem. There's really, we try to get Claris to let us prioritize the stuff and say what's important and what's not. And they tried that at one point with the previous version of the admin console. Is that in here where you can specify warnings or not?
Nope. The old one had errors only, or like give me everything, basically.
Yeah.
And this one, it's on off. That's it. So
Yeah. So basically, the problem is like the other day I had like a customer who had a plugin that wasn't configured correctly, and so the plugin was firing off. It was not Monkey Bread, but it would fire off every 15 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, and it was shooting me over the course of one night like 50 or 60, 80 emails into my box, and I just marked that entire domain and any traffic from that domain as spam, and so that's, of course, I'm not saying good or bad. This is what human nature is. So then we don't have to hear the noise. Except that what if there's a gold nugget in there, an email with a gold nugget of, oh, by the way, there is a legitimate problem and you're out of hard drive space and now it's crashed, right? Problem is I wouldn't see that because I've turned off, because it's like the little boy who cried wolf. So this is the little server that cried wolf. And it's the dumbest, frankly, the dumbest on the planet. It trains people to ignore your errors and messages.
no, because the engineering department isn't on the other end of one of these servers.
Yeah, if they actually had that,
They would fix it Monday morning if that was actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd fix it Monday.
And I've emailed and told them that several of these were, like, for example, one of the totally useless ones, there's a, and it does make sense as an error. It does not make sense to notify anybody about it. You should probably put it in the event log. That does make sense. To describe the whole example, so you've got your backup schedule set up on your FileMaker server. We'll say it's a daily, right? Just to simplify the example, you've got a daily backup, and you've specified your backups are going to go into a location. Let's say it goes into a Dropbox folder. It's a small database, so you're not super worried about it. You don't have any external container data, so there's no concerns like that. It's just you're popping an FMP12, your little app that you built into Dropbox, and that goes in there each night because you want to make sure there's an extra copy of it somewhere so you can sleep well at night. Perfect, great. So one of the issues that happens, for example, is if you try and write a file into Dropbox, for example, or any of those, they'll start trying to sync it immediately, right? Because they're like, oh, you edited a document, or you took some action with that. And so they're going to try and get that thing up into the cloud immediately as fast as possible. And sometimes FileMaker Server's not done like updating the file yet, right? And so if those two things happen simultaneously, if FileMaker Server's not done yet, and say Dropbox in this example tries to go sync it, FileMaker Server will know that and get pissed. Except it never actually fails the backup because Dropbox isn't, it's trying to read it. It's not trying to like change it or sync it or do anything actually wild. It's just trying to pull a copy real quick. And so what you end up with is a screaming series of emails from FileMaker Server telling you about the bloody murder that just took place in its backup directory. And there's no problem at all, and there never has been. Yeah. And you'll get, if you're lucky, you only get a couple of emails. I've gotten 80 from a single server in a night. There's actually one in particular I'm thinking of that screams every evening. So I, fortunately or unfortunately, and is one of the reasons I reached out to Claris about this, I have email rules for, like, I use a local email client. I don't mean like MacMail. I mean, I'm at the office now and I've got one at home, and it scans my inbox every 10 minutes and gets rid of several different kinds of FileMaker Server emails. I don't delete them. They go into a folder, but I don't see them. And that's one of those emails. And it's because when I first got hired 2 or 3 years ago, almost 4 now, I saw screaming emails. Oh my God, the server's on fire. Everybody's going to die. My backup failed, death and dismemberment, right? It's
correct.
A very dire email that you get.
Yeah.
And it's nothing. I checked it every time. There was not a dang thing wrong. The backup worked every time. They were fidelitous. It's just the two things were conflicting, and FileMaker goes, but there's nothing. There's nothing. And so, like, things like that, I don't have any real issue with it noting that somewhere. Maybe put it in the event log or whatever. Cool, no problem. But like emailing me 80 times? Absolutely not. No. I'm actually interested. This one, I don't get this one at all. Like, I understand what local notifications are. That's like this stuff over here, right? Like these are your notifications on OS X. That's great. Why would you put that on the server, and who uses their server in a way where local notifications would ever actually alert a human? I don't know. I don't get it. I've never turned that feature on. I'm sure it works actually. Probably does, but
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, turn on. What happens? Now what?
No,
Or
that'd be
display it
cool.
on a machine.
I had a giggle that maybe it would do local notifications, like because browsers can do notifications now, right? Like
Oh.
everybody hates that. Every website's like, let me send you my news updates, and it's just annoying. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's just horribly annoying.
Right, but it would be funny if you pop up in your Chrome, you come in the morning, and you've got like FileMaker Server over on the side going, "Hey, backup failed, 1 a.m." That'd be funny. And Stu's got a question over here. How much memory as a percent is too high, indicating we need more memory? And that's a very good question that doesn't have an answer. Because if you had done the spec out for your FileMaker server, and let's say RCC has about 25 people logged in 24/7. And so what are we to it? We're on the X large, so we have like 16 gigs of RAM, and that's about right. We could go to 32, right? Yeah, we could bump it up one. That's true. But 16 is certainly enough, at least. If we wanted maybe a little extra performance, we'll explore that on the new server, and we can do some testing. But in any case, right? That's about right. We've got a quad core. We've got 16 gigs of RAM. We got screaming.
Well,
SSDs
how'd you come to that conclusion? The 16, it's based upon the size of the databases that we're munging, right? And
no, in our case, actually not. No, and our cache size is half anyway, 7.5 gigs or
but our databases are bigger than 7.5 gigs in total size.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, they are.
We have about 15 gigs of databases, but how much are we actively munging at a time? So if
the whole set,
the whole set, but frequently quite a bit. And so so that's where the adding memory becomes less. That can help you, but buying bigger hardware is generally never as efficient as fixing your database structural issues, right? So,
and ideally you do both. So, but as far as like we have to add more RAM, so you go do this is actually where contrary to what we usually say, use the rule of thumb for RAM usage, whatever. Okay, cool. That only gives you half of your system's available memory in cache. It's a little less than, right?
Right.
If you get 16 gigs of RAM on the server, you're going to put it ballpark a little less than 8, 7.5, 7, 6, I don't know, whatever, somewhere in there. And so if you go look at the cache hit rates and stuff in FileMaker Server, and that all looks good, then you're already set.
How would you see that? How would you see cache hit rates? Would show us the cache hit rates.
Does this thing do it? Can we do? This is our interactive view. Can I actually do the performance one on here? Oh, there it is. So is it server stats or top call? Which one has that?
I turn them both on. Why not?
This one will be super slow. That doesn't matter. There's like 2 people on here. So we'll turn them both on, and then turn that on. We have 5 logs. I don't need 5. Do I need to refresh this? Let's reload it. Those are still enabled. Yes, block size still 200. Is it not? DAPI, data. Can I not view it here? Do I have to
Yeah.
I'm not seeing the log here, so
the top call was I mean it's the
cool. It's not. Oh, sorry. When enabled, list the client request. Okay, so that's true. Yeah. But that's not, and then again, that's just a number edit. Okay, cool. I don't know if I can see this on here. That's very cool. Let's see.
Rubens and Monkey Bear are going to answer the question because this is actually like a certification test question, kind of like how to find this and get it out.
Yeah. But basically, you go look at your cache hit rate, and Clara says if that's below 95%, you have a problem. Basically, that's their advice. And so if you're doing fine from that perspective, you do this analysis that we're talking about, and you're doing fine otherwise, then you just have to look at how full your system is. So if you, for example, things that add up to additional RAM usage, you'll have half for the FileMaker Server-ish. It'll be about half. You might have a little extra for the data API if you use that. Web presentation engine runs in Java, so you might need a few hundred megabytes for that, etc. If you have plugins, right? 360works email, for example, that also is a Java framework on the back end anyway. And so you'll need some RAM for that. Cool. If after adding all of these things up, your system is uncomfortably full, then you need to add more RAM. And uncomfortably full, as far as I'm concerned, is over about 90%. And then you can decide what you're comfortable with. Basically, we let ours run. Like I said, our alert is on 95% full because that is uncomfortably full, 100% guaranteed. Like that's a little high. But anything about 85% or less, as long as you look at your system and you know that the RAM usage is approximately stable, that's safe. If it's not stable because you have big data processing stuff, you've got like a scheduled script on the server that runs through half your database and churns everything and whatever. Maybe that process runs great, but the FileMaker script engine on the server side doesn't really have like an upper bound on how much RAM it can use, I suppose, except for running out of memory is the basic limitation.
Why don't we find the cache hit rate? Let's find that, because that's a good one to see. But we have to find it, so we need to find the log, or how do we want to do it?
Yeah, I was hoping it would be on the admin console. If it's not,
it used to be back a billion years ago. So
yeah, I'm expecting it to show me.
It's on the server log. Were you the other one where you went to? It said the log, the server, not the log. You're not going to see it there, but it's that server statistic. Server statistic. Go back. Server statistic. It's on server statistic.
Found it. It started writing it. There it is.
Okay, hit that.
Yep. So. What do we get? No, it's a tiny window, so we're gonna go over here. Here's our cache hit rate. All right. Cool.
So that's your number.
Pro
right there.
clients, unsaved percent. This one's not supposed to be over about 10, I think. Cache unsaved. Cache hit rate should be 95% or higher, preferably always higher. Ideally 100 always, but not everything is perfect. You get your pro clients, your open databases, ODBC clients, WebDirect clients, custom web clients. You got all these numbers in here. That's
okay,
great.
So Stu has a question.
Stu
has a chart for us to look at. I think Stu, the answer is yes.
What's his chart?
His chart is, am I sucking
Worrisome?
a big fat one? And then it's like he's at 85.
No, he's following our CC standard. It's about 85. So if it ever bumps above that, you might have a concern. If you don't, then no, leave it. I mean, Richard likes things with a little more free space. I'll just say that's a difference between the two of us. I would try and fill it and leave it.
All right,
and he would say, nah, put 32 in.
Pop this open here, right? So when I'm flying along in the helicopter, we don't want to, I like to keep the top little bit reserve power available in case it goes sideways, right? You don't want to always be flying around at 100%. Because what if you need a little extra to get over a tree or over a power line? You're just going to kill yourself. So the extra 20%, 10%, 20% is the saving grace to keep your out of the fire. But that's just me in a physical world. This ain't like Tron where I'm inside the game and I'm trying to fight the operating system. So
yeah. Let's see. Stu. Oh no, that's tiny. You have, was it 4 gig of RAM? Yeah, that's like a medium basically on Amazon, or the equivalent of a medium on Amazon.
Almost no cache.
They're not. They're not going to have anything. And with a 130 megabyte database, it probably doesn't matter at all. If you have performance issues, if you go look at that, pull your top call stats and that kind of stuff, and you're seeing, worrisome numbers in there, the performance is bad, the network latency numbers are, a suboptimal whatever, or the cache, the hit rate is under 100%, either generally or when you're doing stuff, then it might be appropriate to get a little more horsepower on the server, even though you only have 130 megabyte database or whatever. The server sucks. There you go.
I've been told I should watch this guy. I've never watched him, Hell's Kitchen or whatever.
Yep.
All right.
But like those 4 gig machines, that is like, so To clarify two things. One, that is technically actually like a misconfiguration of FileMaker Server, even though, yes, RCC does that also, because the minimum specs are 8 gigs of RAM, period. And so they don't endorse a 4 gig server. And actually, one of the funnier things was, so when they launched Cloud 2, when Claris launched Cloud 2, they actually started with the medium machines, which are the 4 gig of RAM servers. And at some point, like all of their tiny low end customers that were using those, right? They've only got 5 seats or something like that. They just unilaterally bumped everybody from a medium to a large. And so the base size on Cloud 2 now is actually a large, which is 8 gigs of RAM. So complying with their own suggested requirements, basically. But yeah, those are like, if you don't use the database, like, it's a CRM. It just does some records. There's no reporting. You're not doing anything wild. Sure, yeah, 4 gigs of RAM will do you. 5, keep it under 10 people. You'll probably be fine. No real issues. But as soon as you start demanding anything from the platform, I'm going to tell you to get a large. Basically, I'm going to tell you to bump the horsepower. So, and that's how we treat it. A lot of our old customers that were on the original version of a cloud platform, it's a tiny Linux box. They were fine. They have a CRM. They do some basic business management. Like, they're not demanding a massive amount. They're not running, reports that shoot out 100 megabyte or 100 page PDF or what, whatever, stuff like that. They're not doing that. And the customers that are, they buy an appropriate server for that, because the server's going to have to do work. And usually it'll be doing work while the people are on it. And so with the tiniest systems, you basically pick between those two. So if you don't have server-side processes, I don't know, you're good to go probably, as long as your database isn't too big. But odd behaviors on complex PSOS. Yeah. Do you have anything about what the odd behaviors are, Stu? And you can have, not sure yet. Okay, yeah. I was going to say, the thing that I've noticed is with server-side scripts on 19, I have a general recommendation that you explicitly commit your records. If whatever your process is that you're running needs, like capital N, needs to have a consistent view of the data. 19 is much more aggressive on the server side about record caching, and I don't mean the one in RAM that we keep talking about. I mean there's an additional third layer of caches on disk as well, and basically, like, my observation of the behavior, this is not like technically documented or something from Claris, but my observation of the behavior is that it does not always immediately actually commit the records into the database, like, directly. It'll like stash a few of them off on the side before popping them all in at once or something like that. And because that process is, short version, not instantaneous always, you can, I think it's honestly part of the wonderful speed up, frankly, that we get on 19. I think some of that, like, we'll get there eventually, and scripted processes or things that are just reading records here and there, or even if they're screaming through a bunch of stuff, if they're not doing actual commits, like writing to the database, like, slightly old data is fine, which is generally true unless your process requires consistency. And so, I don't know, I've observed some oddities, we'll just call it that, oddities, with some of the processes when you don't have explicit commits, when you're doing changes in stream of the of like a server-side script. And so you get screaming performance, which is lovely. It's lovely until your process, like, requires consistency. So that's my recommendation. And so it doesn't change much for you. It's just trying to pay attention to when you're doing an implicit commit versus an explicit one. So a lot of people, the implicit commits are like, you do a close window, that's an implicit commit. Even if it's like, server side, we're within the PSOS context here. Like that, within that, you're closing the window. It's a virtual window that doesn't really apply on server, but it will keep contexts different between various virtual windows that are running inside your PSOS process. And so when you close it, it's like, if you set a couple fields in there, it's going to do a commit. Of course it has to. But I have found it better for consistency purposes to do an explicit commit before you do that, basically. It, I don't know, seems to force it through.
Well, it's been a long, extra beefy session, so a little over an hour and whatever and change. Anything else we have? Are they good for everyone? Hopefully that helps you out. And then we will be back Monday with us attempting to do Azure. We've got it kind of working. We have found some Claris documentation that will help you with this a little bit. But Jacob Taylor and I will be working through that kind of slowly with everyone together, right?
Yep.
On Monday, and then follow up on Tuesday a little bit. So, yep, there we go. All right, everyone, see ya. Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir.